Chapter 9, from Part 2, Job. A reading from A Sacred Sorrow by Michael Card. Many commentaries say the story of Job is about theodicy, the problem of evil. I disagree. The book of Job is really about the problem of God, or to put it another way, the mystery of God. Were it not for the appearance of God in chapter 38, the book of Job would more resemble one of Plato's dialogues than a book of Holy Scripture. Until he appears, we have only bits and pieces, the fallen fragments of human theology and logic, intermingled with the passion of Job's intermittent and failing tears. God's appearance at the close of the book is what sets it apart. His showing up is what the story is ultimately about. While much of the book concerns itself with the faithfulness of Job, who holds on, in the end the book is more a celebration of the faithfulness of God, who shows up. As so often happens, God does not make his appearance until Job's fingers have almost let go. It is a last-minute advent, an arrival in the nick of time. As we have seen, the wisdom books are really about the inadequacy of human wisdom. By the conclusion of Elihu's final speech, you sense that you've reached the end of human wisdom, and if anything luminous is going to be said, it will have to be said by God. If he had appeared in such a way as we might have expected, he would not be God, for God is always beyond and unexpected. Job had been crying out for answers. We would have expected an all-wise being to appear and answer all Job's questions, and ours. Job's friends have gone on and on about an outraged judge. If they had gotten what they were looking for, God would have appeared and condemned Job for his faults. But no one gets what they want. And when God finally appears, it is neither as judge nor answer man. God arrives on the scene full of questions, and they are infinitely difficult questions. The first one would have sufficed to shut them all down. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Chapter 38, verse 4. But what follows is a barrage, a train wreck of unanswerable questions. When their roaring echoes away like the thunder, all we hear is Job's amazed stammering, I put my hand over my mouth. Then the sky opens up once more with another torrent of impossible queries. As if they weren't enough, God begins to sing two powerful songs, the song of Behemoth and Leviathan. Has anyone ever been more overwhelmed and exhausted than when he came to the end of all of this? His possessions gone, his children's dead, his body ravaged by disease, his mind unraveled with who knows how many hours or days of argument and debate. Having come to the brink of despair, what emotional strength could he possibly have left? And after all this, what withering effect would withstanding such an onslaught from God have on such a beleaguered person? All this because of a dialogue between God and Satan, about which he knows nothing, of absolutely nothing. Only one thing can be said with any certainty about Job at this point. Job has nothing left. He takes his hand away from his parched lips long enough to whisper, I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. These are the words of an exhausted mystic, of a man who has come to know that God is beyond all our words, beyond every equation. He is totally other, completely uncontainable, and yet still, inexplicably, he showed up in the end. He came and finished the dance with the servant about whom he had boasted. Job, the prosperous patriarch, is now the penniless, broken man of lament. He has nothing left but God. My ears have heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. A mystic is someone who has had an inexpressible encounter with God, an encounter with a truth that cannot be described by words, but can only become incarnate and seen as Job has seen it. We usually picture mystics as hermits or monks who willingly forsake everything for God, but all that Job lost had been violently ripped away from him. After all he had sacrificed, after all he had suffered, after all he had lamented, all Job gets back is God. The JPS translation renders Job's final words, I recant and relent, being but dust and ashes. Having refused to let go through his stubborn lament, Job stands before God, broken, bloody, still covered with his detestable, putrefying sores. Having lost everything a person could lose, he now possesses everything. In the end, the real miracle of Job is the spiritual intuition of Jesus he discovers through his pain and deep sense of abandonment by God. It provides a glimpse into the mystery of just how God uses a false perception of his absence, for indeed his very nature makes it impossible for him not to be everywhere, to awaken in us the hunger for Emmanuel, God with us. Job's realization of the incompleteness of the initial equation created in him a deep awareness of his need for someone to arbitrate between himself and God, someone he refers to as an advocate, someone he calls Redeemer. Though his friends would dissuade him from reaching out through lament, Job holds on to the God he believes he knows and is granted one of the most stunning images of Jesus in the Old Testament. Without the pain, he would never have known the need. Without the need, he would never have seen ahead to the one who would perfectly fulfill that need. The shadow of Jesus of Nazareth is there in Job. His prayers of protest are only a small drop in a sea of laments that would eventually call forth the coming of Jesus. Though Job's suffering was not inflicted directly by God, he is always ultimately responsible. Job realizes in the end that he would have it no other way. God must be responsible if he is omnipotent. Case closed. So what are we to do with him? What did Job, Jeremiah, David, and Jesus do? They simply refused to let go. Job perfectly prepares us for the coming journey from Psalm 1 to Psalm 150. As innocent sufferer, Job becomes a forerunner of Jesus. His life whispers the truth that would be shouted from the housetops of Jesus' experience, that only suffering can save us. Job is a ramp leading up to the man of sorrows. Now would be a good time to put down this book and go read through Job. It will take the average reader a couple of hours to do so. As you read, look for the progression to Job's experience as a frustrated lamenter. Try to read at the level of your own imagination, seeking to enter into and share Job's frustration. When God appears at the end of the book, make an effort to understand what it would be like to attempt to answer that long line of impossible questions. A lament. O Lord, in the sacrament of this moment, let the wordless sorrow of my silence give voice to my praise of you.